Guatemala's highest electoral body has made official the electoral triumph of the Semilla Movement ticket, which has been suspended by the Citizens Registry. Storm Idalia became the fourth hurricane of the current season as it moves away from Cuba, leaving rains in the west of the country. And the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has denounced new destabilization attempts of the United States, Japan, and South Korea in the region. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Let's begin with the news. In Guatemala, the highest electoral body confirmed the electoral triumph of the Arevalo-Herrera presidential formula for the Semilla Movement. The Electoral Court's announcement came only minutes after the Citizens Registry ruled the provisional suspension of the Semilla Movement over an alleged case of forged signatures that dates back to 2018. For his part, the president-elect, Bernardo Arevalo, during a press conference, stated they would appeal the annulment while underscoring the importance of the announcement made by the Electoral Top Court, which ratifies his win in the elections and respects the sovereign decision of the Guatemalan people. The Semilla Movement obtained over 60% of the votes in the second round of the presidential elections, surpassing UNA's Sandra Torres, who obtained just over 39% of the ballots.
The results of the second round of elections confirm the resounding and sovereign decision of the people of Guatemala, who have entrusted Karin Herrera and me, Bernardo Arevalo, with the leadership of the country. As of this moment, nothing can legally prevent me from taking office on January 14th, 2024, as established in the Constitution.
On Monday, Ecuador's National Electoral Council has decided to reform the regulations and authorize in-person voting. The electoral body reformed the regulations of the extraordinary presidential and legislative elections in view of the October 15th runoff. In this way, Ecuadorians living abroad will vote in person both in the second round of the presidential and legislative elections. After the problems faced with the electronic vote attributed by the authorities to alleged attacks, the measure comes in response to the claims of the Ecuadorian diaspora regarding the right to vote for a new president and lawmakers. Colombian cargo transporters have lifted their demonstrations and temporarily suspended calls for future protests after a dialogue with representatives of the National Executive Branch. The Vice Minister of the Transport, Eduardo Enriquez, and the Head of Transport and Transit Portfolio, Alejandro Zambrano, met with 5 representatives of the Cargo Transport Union and defined a roadmap. The Vice Minister reported that the sector's requests were heard and agreements were reached on several of the problems faced by the sector. The workers held protests nationwide on Monday, especially in rejection of the continuous fuel increases. The Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and the Argentinian Economy Minister Sergio Massa met to deepen cooperation ties. Da Silva and Massa addressed issues on the bilateral agenda, such as using the Chinese currency yuan in their trade exchanges, the opening of agricultural markets, the bidding process for the second section of the President Nestor Kirchner gas pipeline, and Argentina's BRICS membership. The Argentinian minister also met with his Brazilian counterpart Fernando Haddad, with whom he discussed a payment mechanism worth $600 million for bilateral trade. Colombian President Gustavo Petro met on Monday with his Costa Rican counterpart Rodrigo Chavez and with the head of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights in San Jose, the capital of Costa Rica. The meetings take place during a 2-day visit by the Colombian president to the Central American nation, following an invitation by his Costa Rican counterpart Rodrigo Chavez. The leaders of the two nations agreed to work together to defend their coffee in the world market. According to Gustavo Petro, the agreement seeks to obtain greater income for an emblematic product of both countries at a time when the international price of the grain and the exports of both nations are falling. The presidents also discussed tourism, security and migration issues, which will be addressed later in the working commissions headed by the foreign ministers of both countries.
We discussed very strategic matters such as climate change, peace for the region, and taking huge amount of resources away from the bad people.
We have discussed even more complex issues like migration, a new and growing phenomenon on which we have to build a common Latin American policy.
And the government of Mexico supports Haiti in the face of the recent cholera outbreak on the Caribbean nation and has sent an Air Force plane with supplies and assistance to that country. The Mexican delegation was received in Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship, Jean-Victor Juneau, and the Mexican ambassador Daniel Cámara Avalos. The mission will deliver 2.25 thousand kilos of calcium hypochlorite, enough to make drinkable 867,780,000 liters of water. Upon its return, the Mexican Air Force aircraft will transport 110 members of the Haitian Armed Forces to the North American nation to receive training and instruction in drone operations. And in a new episode of Venezuela on the Move, our colleagues Adriana Sibori and Jesus Romero takes us to another remote spot in the Venezuelan geography, El Jarrillo in Miranda State. There, and this time in the slope of the mountains, local farmers look for new sustainable ways to ensure the production while honoring their traditions and the heritage. This is the Venezuela that resists and also grows. Let's see.
The mountain landscape opens and gives way to the fog. El Jarrillo is one of the villages in the area that stands out from the heights, and the climate does not exceed 18 degrees. José Adrián was 100% dedicated to flowers, but he was seduced by a new love.
I am extremely in love with this type of cultivation. Venezuelan coffee is so incredible that every day you find something different. A new flavor, a new texture, a new body, and the sweetness of this coffee.
These are specialty coffee beans. The red beans are sweeter than the yellow ones. He does all the work himself in the fields, where he spends hours collecting, then he cleans the harvest beans to finally roast them. His coffee has won the 8th place in international events, and he sells it to local inhabitants.
I will not leave Venezuela even if they take me tied up.
The neighbor is someone who won't leave either. We follow his steps to his farm, where he was also a floriculturist. However, due to the difficult economic situation, he was forced to change his line of farming.
My grandparents were farmers, and by inheritance my parents were farmers as well. The farm is a family farm. My wife and my daughter help me, but we also have 8 other people who collaborate in the cleaning work.
They are looking for excellence, and one of the vegetables they collect is Romanesco broccoli, which is a mix with cauliflower, and the interesting thing is that according to experts, they have perfect geometry, and they have repeated designs in different sizes. These lands are fertile all year long.
Here you can grow anything you plant. El Jarrillo is a beautiful place with a wonderful climate. This soil is excellent to work with.
This family farm has been growing vegetables and fruits for 30 years. Not only outdoors like the typical beaches of the region, but also in the greenhouse where they can control the climate. There you can see strawberries or tomatoes. They have their own irrigation system. The village was founded by Germans about 133 years ago, but is now inhabited by Venezuelans. There are 23 families in the region dedicated to agriculture.
Jesús Romero y Arena Sibori, Miranda, Venezuela.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, Hurricane Idalia became the fourth hurricane of the current season as it moves away from Cuba, leaving rains in the west of the country. Cuban authorities decreed cyclone alarm phase for the provinces of Pinar del Rio, Artemisa, and the special municipality of Isla de la Juventud, and the alert phase for the provinces of Havana and Mayabeque as the storm neared the Cape San Antonio, the westernmost point of the island. According to the Meteorological Institute, Tropical Storm Idalia became a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 120 kilometers per hour. As it continues to move away from Cuba, the probability of heavy rains and intense downpours will remain high in the western region. The feeding bands of this tropical organism may also cause rains in the central region. Poland and the Baltic states, members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, warned that they will close their borders with Belarus in the event of any military incident or a massive migration push by Minsk. The governments of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia argued that the warnings were due to growing tensions at NATO and European Union borders with Belarus, with alleged troops, which they claim are diverting African and Middle Eastern migrants to Europe, despite the established barriers. The nations demanded that Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko expel the Wagner mercenaries and the migrants from his territory, as well as from the border areas. The Polish Interior Minister, Mariusz Kamiński, acknowledged that closing all borders with Belarus will have negative consequences, though. On the other hand, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said that if the Lithuanian, Latvian, and Polish authorities close their borders with Belarus, they will only harm themselves and their citizens. The head of state stressed that Belarus is a peaceful country and has no pretensions towards its western neighbors, reiterating that Belarus does not need Polish, Lithuanian, or Latvian lands, as his country does not work through any of them. French President Emmanuel Macron informed that his ambassador will remain in Niger despite the expiration of the interim government's ultimatum. The French head of state insisted that Paris condemns the coup and will not change its position, and asserted that it will continue its full support to President Mohamed Bazoum. Macron also said that the French ambassador did not heed the ultimatum, as he considers that the order did not come from legitimate authorities. The Nigerian Foreign Ministry issued on Friday a 48-hour deadline for Sylvain It to leave the African country after he refused to meet with the new Niamey leaders.
We have to be clear, coherent, consistent, otherwise, who will listen to us? In which African capitals will they be able to say that we have a policy of partnership with a leader if when something like this happens, we cannot support him? So I think our policy is the right one. It is based on the courage of President Bazoum and the commitment of our diplomats and our ambassador on the ground, who stand firm despite the pressure.
And the French president also reminded that his country does not recognize or support coup-born governments under any circumstances.
Our policy is simple. We do not recognize the politicians. We support a president who has not resigned, to whom we remain committed, and we support the diplomatic actions, and if decided, the military actions of ECOWAS, in a partnership approach which is the one I presented last February.
India's government reported that trade between New Delhi and Moscow grew by 190% in the first half of 2023. According to New Delhi's Ministry of Trade and Industry, the growth reached $33.5 billion between January and July this year. During the period, imports of Russian products in India reached $35.5 billion, 3 times more than in the first half of 2022. Meanwhile, the supply of crude oil and oil derivatives, the main item of these imports, multiplied 4.4 times, reaching $25.2 billion. Meanwhile, Indian exports to Russia increased by 70% to $1.9 billion. Pharmaceuticals continue to be the most important item, with a sales growth of 4.5% to $84 million. TeleSUR English launches its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. And now we will have a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has denounced that the actions of the United States, Japan, and South Korea are destabilizing the peninsula and are fueling a possible nuclear conflict in the region. During a ceremony held at the Navy Command, the president denounced the reckless moves announced by the heads of Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo commands, which he qualified as gangs. In recent meetings, according to North Korean reports, the 3 countries announced joint and periodic military maneuvers under different names. Pyongyang assures that these actions have turned the area into the world's largest concentration point of war material, forcing the North's army to equip itself with new weapons. The 3rd China-Africa Peace and Security Forum was held on Tuesday in Beijing, with the participation of at least 50 delegates from member countries of the African Union. Chinese Defense Minister Li Shanfu opened the meeting with a speech in which he called for comprehensive cooperation that contributes to promoting non-confrontational dialogue. This event, which aims to improve communications in the security and defense sector, seeks to play a positive role in community building with a shared future in the new era and reiterates China's commitment to African countries and the global and regional interests of peace and stability. Libya's unity government temporarily suspended its top diplomat, Najla Mangush, after her unexpected meeting with her Israeli counterpart, Eli Cohen. The High Council of State described the meeting as an offense to the rich history of struggle by the Libyan people in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. The government body urged all the competent authorities to take the necessary measures and responsibility. Following the decision, the government authorities announced the launching of an administrative investigation to be carried out by a commission presided over by the Minister of Justice. The meeting between Mangush and Cohen also sparked social protests in several cities against the top diplomat's action. In this context, on Monday, Libyan Prime Minister visited the Palestinian embassy in the capital Tripoli to affirm his country's continued support to the Palestinian cause. The visit came after the Beya suspended Foreign Minister Najla Mangush and referred her for an investigation over a meeting last week with her Israeli counterpart in Italy. Mangush fled the country a day after Israel revealed a visit, news that prompted scattered street protests in the chaos-stricken North African nation. During his meeting with Palestinian Ambassador Muhammad Rahal, the Beya affirmed his country's support of Palestinians and that his previous foreign minister does not represent the government's position. And on Tuesday, the General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, a chairman of Sudan's ruling sovereign council, traveled to Egypt, where he met with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The visit is the first trip abroad since the conflict broke out between the army faction he leads and the rapid support forces under Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. Burhan informed about his trip on Monday in the coastal city of Port Sudan, where he affirmed that a military operation in which the three forces took part allows him to leave the country safely. At the announcement of his departure, he reiterated that he will not make pacts with those he considers have betrayed the Sudanese people. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.